Welcome back to day 2 of the APAICS Tech Summit. I'm Madalene Mielke, President and CEO of APAICS, the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies. I'd like to thank Amazon, our presenting sponsor, as well as all of our panelists, moderators, and partner organizations. We had an action-packed day 1, and day 2 is no different. Our first speaker today is APAICS board member Krish Gupta. Krish is Senior Vice President for Litigation and Intellectual Property for Dell. He leads the litigation and intellectual property teams with global responsibility for managing and resolving business and intellectual property litigation and disputes, providing legal support for and developing the company's policies for patents, trademarks, and copyrights, open source and standards, building and managing the patent, trademark, and domain portfolios, intellectual property licensing, driving patent and IP policy efforts, and IP support for M&A activities and commercial transactions. Thank you for joining us today, Krish.
Hello and good afternoon. I'm Krish Gupta, Senior Vice President in Legal at Dell Technologies. I also have the privilege to sit on the board of the directors of the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies. Today, we're bringing together corporate leaders, experts, community organizers, and Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander elected officials to discuss technologies and policies that impact both their community and the nation. This is a topic that I'm passionate about, and thankfully, I have the opportunity to work for an organization that shares the same passion. At Dell Technologies, we've always believed in the power of technology to solve the biggest challenges. It's core to who we are as a company and how we work with customers and communities to drive progress. When the pandemic hit us in March of 2020, we saw the need for access go beyond traditional brick and mortar schools to healthcare, remote learning and working, and community support. The disparity between those with access and those without became even more evident. We know technology has the power to transform, but for those without access, it is creating a divide. Dell Technologies is committed to driving digital inclusion and bridging that divide. We believe everyone, regardless of socioeconomic background, should have equitable access to opportunities for the future. We recognize that the challenges facing each community are different. While one community is struggling with access to affordable broadband, another may have limited access to devices or digital literacy skills. Critical to making a meaningful impact is the understanding that we cannot drive digital inclusion alone, and there is no one-size-fits-all solution to building digital equity for the people impacted by this issue. We must move faster to address the digital inequities in our country, especially when it comes to underserved population. The time is now to ensure digital inclusion for every person in the US. And we can do this by first advocating to help solve the broadband deficiencies that exist throughout communities. Dell strongly supports congressional broadband funding to address digital inclusion in underserved populations. However, we would like to see allowable uses extended beyond fiber to ensure that wireless technologies that facilitate 5G are also options for all communities. We believe public-private collaborations will be a critical tool to pull the cloud and IT industries into the evolution of 5G. Governments must find ways to attract companies by sharing risk and creating incentives to lower the overall costs of deployment, prevent vendor lock-in, and allow for the transition to the next iteration of technologies like 6G. With the capital resources and talent to build a national 5G infrastructure, cloud and IT system providers can increase their participation in 5G and provide at-scale solutions sooner. Second, partnering with like-minded organizations to directly bringing digital inclusion to underserved communities is another way to address the issue. For example, last year, we partnered with AT&T and others to support connected learning centers, in which Dell contributed devices as part of the larger ecosystem to bring connectivity, skills, and devices to underserved communities across the nation. Third, we can solve the issue or address the issue by looking beyond the device and tools to ensure that every community has the skills to use them. For example, since its pilot in 2019, Dell's Student Tech Crew program has expanded tenfold, empowering students in underserved and underrepresented groups with skills, resources, and technology, as well as building a diverse talent pipeline in an increasingly digital world. The complementary program provides hands-on training and self-paced learning opportunities that arm students ages 13 to 18 with technology skills and future career opportunities. At Dell Technologies, we're committed to addressing digital inclusion and set a goal to impact 1 billion lives by 2030 by purposefully bringing our portfolio of products and services along with our people to drive digital inclusion and address the digital divide. Today, we have an opportunity to come together, put any differences aside, and instead merge our thoughts and ideas on how we can leverage technology to make a better community for us all. Thank you.
Thank you again to Krish for those remarks. Our first panel today is Measuring Your ERG Impact. This panel will discuss various initiatives that can contribute to positive outcomes for companies, employees, and their communities. I'd like to introduce our moderator and APAICS board chair, Susan Jin Davis. Susan has 30 years of experience in the telecommunications, media, entertainment, and technology industries. She currently serves as Social Impact Officer for Roker Entertainment, a leading producer of TV, digital, branded programming, and entertainment. She's also an advisor for ALO Advisors, a consulting firm specializing in areas of sustainability, diversity, and corporate social responsibility. Welcome to Susan and our next group of panelists.
Thank you, Madalene and APAICS, for convening this summit. And I'm very pleased to be your moderator for this panel called Measuring Your ERG Impact. I'm Susan Jin Davis, Social Impact Officer for Roker Entertainment. Employee resource groups, or ERGs, are groups that are created by organizations to create safe spaces for people to convene around common interests. For example, there are ERGs for ANHPI employees at many companies. They're also an important tool that can be used to drive awareness and education around topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're an important component of a company or organization's commitment to driving DEI inside and out of its doors. Now, increasingly, companies are using ERGs to retain and attract talented employees, to drive business value through employee engagement, and to offer business impacting initiatives and strengthening community ties. These ERGs are a critical business component of organizations and companies. Today, I'm very excited to convene a panel of tech company leaders who will help us learn about the various initiatives that can contribute to positive outcomes for companies, employees, customers, and communities. We're going to talk about how to really leverage ERGs to move the needle on socially impacting goals and to get your employees activated to bring their full selves to work. So let's get started. Let me introduce the panelists that we have today. We have Michael Chop, who is a conversational interaction designer and engineer at Apple. In addition, as the Asian Pacific at Apple Employee Resource Group co-chair, he helps bring the Asian American and Pacific Islander community together in awareness and connection. Welcome, Michael. Vanessa Chui leads the Employee Connections team at DoorDash. Her team uses design thinking to create large-scale employee programs that impact 15,000 plus employees. From employee resource groups to customer obsession programs like WeDash, she connects the heartbeat of the employee population to each other and to the business. Welcome, Vanessa. Alexandra Dailerien serves as Vice President and Impact and Inclusion at Comcast Corporation, accountable for the employee engagement program portfolio, including volunteerism, employee giving, and board service engagement. In addition, she leads the impact and inclusion technology transformation, bringing innovative new technology solutions to the organization. We welcome you, Alex. And finally, we have Belinda Frazier, the head of culture and diversity for TikTok North America, Latin America, and Australia. For more than a decade, she has driven work in the space of diversity and inclusion. Welcome, Belinda. So let's get started. Question number one. I'd like to go around and talk about your company's ERG program. Tell us about the role in your organization. How have these delivered value? And highlight some success stories and best practices for our audience today. Let's start with Belinda.
Thank you, Susan. So when I think of our ERGs, their role is three. They have vast purposes as organizations, but for us, we focus on three things. They create community for our employees from that dimension of diversity, as well as their allies. They also provide cultural insights to the business. Oftentimes, it's important to really avoid cultural missteps when it comes to products or experiences or features, to have insight into that culture. And our ERGs, since they are on site, they're a bit of our focus group, both proactively and reactively. So they do provide cultural insights to the business. They also amplify the voices of underrepresented groups on issues that are important to them. We saw that a lot in 2020 when everything happened, here in the United States. Our ERGs were really letting us know what was going on in app, what was going on in the community, and amplifying some of the concerns of the Black community in that particular instance. So those are three things that is really the role of the ERGs at TikTok.
Thanks so much, Belinda. So Mike Chop at Apple, talk to us. You are kind of the veteran ERG member of the panel.
Thank you very much, Susan, Belinda. So our ERG has actually been around for over 30 years. So as you said, it's been quite a journey for us. As you can imagine, the organization has grown and morphed into many different things in that time. It's been a place to celebrate culture, for people get together and eat and share stories together. It's been a professional network and a place for people to grow one's career. But in recent years, it's become that safe place also to talk about what it really means to be Asian American. And I think that's actually one of the very interesting things that's kind of happened in our group as well, is a place for Asians who are in Asia to understand what it's like to be an Asian American and kind of share those stories together. And again, in the past few years, to find allies and other underrepresented voices and groups inside Apple to kind of work together, especially in the past few years, as it's been more difficult for people to kind of understand what's happening in the overall culture and political structure. Many people are becoming activated and kind of aware of what's going on in the culture today. In terms of business impact, a great example is my organization, Siri. And to give a quick explanation of kind of what I do is, in my day job, I actually figure out how to give Siri their voice. And so, for example, if you can imagine when you're talking to your phone and you want Siri to call your friend or your mother or someone in your family, you want Siri to be able to pronounce their names correctly. And so this might seem like a very simple thing, but if you can think of this cross-culturally, it's super important and engaging for your device to pronounce your loved one's names correctly. And so we actually participate that across different cultures to help our products pronounce your name correctly. And another great example is during the Stop API movement, we did a lot of work to make sure that Siri answers the question when a user says, how can I participate in the Stop Asian Hate movement, that Siri actually answers appropriately. So again, thank you very much for being on the panel. I'll kick it back to you, Susan.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mike. So Vanessa, let's move to you. What's DoorDash doing in the ERG space?
Yeah, thank you. So very similar. So I love that we have a great number of people on this panel. Our ERGs are to celebrate, to uplift, but I think it's really important to take a step back on what is the role of ERGs in the organization. And I think for the longest time, the employee experience at a corporate workplace was a one size fits all. And we know that that's no longer true. So our ERG program is a literal seat at the table, right? Let us not talk at you. Let us work with you to create the experiences that you want. And I think the best companies do this in the best way, where they really understand that in order for a company to perform really well during quarterly earnings or create the best products that we're proud of, we can't do it in a room and not talk to our customer. And by talking to our customer, we're inviting our ERGs to actually be a group of people where you volunteer and you come in and say, hey, I want to really influence what DoorDash's culture is like for my community. And I think oftentimes when you hear ERGs in the space right now, especially in employer brand and recruitment marketing, it's sold as this awesome mechanism, this awesome program, which it is. But a lot of people don't realize that it was started by the Black Caucus and Xerox because it was really hard. Our ERGs are underrepresented groups within communities that have for so long not gotten the resources, systemically have been, not given the right opportunities. So at DoorDash, we really, really focus on our 8 ERGs and think, how can we make their experience better? If you are an Asian person working at DoorDash, are you tolerated or you are celebrated, right? Our parents at DoorDash, what type of partnerships can we create with the benefits team to make your experience a little bit better? So at DoorDash, our ERGs are tied directly to business value. And we also believe that when employees are thriving and actually have a seat at the table, we can create a better, more productive workplace for everyone.
Thanks, Vanessa. And finally, Alex, Comcast ERGs. I know a little bit about that, but tell us a lot about it and what's working for Comcast.
Thank you, Susan. Of course, you do, and you've been a leader and a champion in our ERG community in prior years, and we appreciate that. At Comcast, we actually started our ERG journey in 2012. We have 9 employee resource groups today, and we actually just launched our newest ERG in 2021, and that is our Indigenous ERG, and really bringing that community together. We have over 30,000 employees that are members of one or more ERGs, so a lot of passion and engagement. And it's really truly part of our DNA at Comcast. We do view ERG members as a culture driver for the company overall. And we do have a motto or an approach where we're really positioning ERGs as this notion of you don't have to be to belong. So whether you are part of a specific ERG community or you identify with that community or you're an ally or trying to learn more about that community, we invite employees to participate in all of our 9 ERGs. And we have national chapters, regional chapters, so really catering to those local needs and nuances across our footprint. Participating in our ERGs is really an opportunity for our employees to grow professionally as well as personally. And we're also providing leadership growth opportunities, networking opportunities, cultural sensitivity, trainings and learning opportunities, and really building those relationships. And we do see employees on the front lines of any issue, internally or externally. And actually, I will note that it was our APAI employees who actually helped us become alerted to early on to some of the disturbing and sadly ongoing trends within APAI violence. And they've been the ones that have challenged us and challenged the status quo and made us a better company and actually helped with our response within that situation. And then lastly, I will say, similar to what Mike shared earlier, we do see our ERGs as imperatives in driving business product success. And we too engage our ERG members in testing and quality assurance of certain products, including the development of our Xfinity Voice Remote, for example.
Thanks. So think about what we just heard. ERGs can make safe spaces for employees. ERGs can be used to make products and services better. ERGs can be used to bring people to the table, to increase representation. ERGs can be used to attach ourselves closer to our communities. So my next question to each of you is we are talking about the AANHPI community here at this tech summit sponsored by APAICS. Talk a little bit about how your ERGs have been able to help ANHPIs in the tech industry. We talked a little bit about how they have been supportive in light of the rise in Asian hate and acts of violence and aggression against ANHPIs. That could be one example, but I'd love to hear more from you. So I'm going to go back around now backwards. Alex, why don't you start and we'll go back around and if you want to jump in before somebody, just, raise your hand or let me know and we can go that way too. So Alex, go ahead.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, our employees are on the front lines. They understand and they are tapped into the issues and concerns that are impacting their communities, both geographically, socially, culturally, you name it. So for us, it's really tapping into those conversations, hearing that feedback from our employees, having open conversations with them, and then taking action and making change based on that feedback that our employees provide to us. As we have navigated social justice conversations over the last 2 years, our ERG voices have been integral, and specifically our AAPI community, integral in some of the decisions we have made around programmatic strategy, investments, partnerships, etc. And we've actually stood up in 2021 a wonderful new governance structure, and really enabling employees via what we call the Elevate Fund, enabling our ERGs to create conversations, learning opportunities, events where they can better bring awareness, not just to the AAPI community, but to the broader employee resource group community and the broader company overall, internally and externally. And then I will also say that the approach that we have taken has always been to educate employees, bring awareness, but then also this ability to take action. So my team, as we mentioned earlier, also manages our matching gift program. So enabling our employees to donate to nonprofit organizations that they are passionate about. So we're always tying the conversation back to, okay, so now that we've brought awareness, now that we have engaged our employees in a learning education experience, what is it that they can take action on immediately, right? Really impacting those community organizations and nonprofit partners. So that is something that we have seen successful within the community.
All right, Vanessa.
I love this topic. Let me tell you why. You can't talk about the Asian American experience in America without talking about the idea of immigrant entrepreneurs. And that's why I'm so proud of DoorDash, because if you think about DoorDash, I know it's yummy things that pop up in your head. What we really want to do is connect the local business to your city, right? So when you're in LA, Seattle, or wherever you are, what are the mom and pop shops that aren't the big franchises that are serving you, that their whole paycheck from their restaurant is supporting 5 people or putting their kids through college, right? It actually goes back to our founding story where Tony, our CEO, immigrated from China and worked through his mom's kitchen, cleaning dishes, washing everything that's back of house because his mom couldn't get her medical license to operate in America. And from there, he saw, wow, there is such a gap for these immigrant businesses that might not have the tools to have people deliver their food and therefore missing out on all that income and all that money. So let me give you an example on how I was super proud of how our API ERG directly partnered with our social impact strategy. So during our Immigrant Heritage Month, we partnered with Kiva to match loans up to $15,000 to only immigrant-owned businesses. And we drove those businesses to also participate in our Kitchens Without Borders program, which is a program that spotlights immigrants and refugee business owners and actually connects them with other merchants that are in the similar industry to share best practices and resources such as marketing and mentorship. We absolutely could not have done that with our API ERG, because I know for me personally, the best spots that I know are mom and pop. They do not speak English. They do not even know what an ERG, let alone what a tech company even is. And our ERGs went out into the streets and say, Vanessa, we cannot move forward without this fund, without including these 10 or 15 local merchants in our city that really deserve the opportunity. So I think from an activism, social impact lens, our ERGs are the connector. We're the glue. And I talked about this earlier. We can't talk at people. We have to work with them, right? So ERGs are really activated in a way where they bring their own authentic experiences in ways that corporate companies can't really do that from 15,000 feet. Let me share another technical example with you that we're also really proud of, which is, I think every tech company, when you learn about us, we do hackathons. Well, at least at DoorDash, we do hackathons. And one of my favorite tracks that we've done is the inclusion track, where we had a lot of product and designers come in and say, hey, how can we create different languages for our merchants, right? Right now, DoorDash, depending on where you are, is using an English menu. What about our Cantonese or Hainanese or Malaysian Chinese merchants who can't read traditional Chinese, right? So really getting into the nuance, I think that's the takeaway here is ERGs also help you get into the nuance on how you can create better products instead of like a sweeping business decision, really looking into the research and pulling out all the different communities that we would have never found without our powerful communities on the ground. I'll throw it back to you, Susan.
I love it. I hope our audience has taken a lot of notes because these are great companies. We already know that. And by the way, I consume from all of you and I love all of you. But underneath it, you have employees that are fortunate enough to be fully engaged. I don't know how you can engage employees and make them happy without these ERGs. So Mike, talk a little bit about Apple and the ANHPI community.
Yeah, and hearing some of these great stories, some companies that are so different from us, but are also, the same. It's really inspiring to hear what other people are doing. I think one of the things I wanted to kind of impart on the audience here is the role of the ERG to be ready. And so I kind of talked about the things that we've been there for our employees. Like it's a place to connect, it's a place to build your career, it's a place to network. But I kind of wanted to emphasize the point that you might not know the next thing that you need your ERG to be. And that's to kind of encourage people to be ready. One of the things that kind of happened as we went through our journey and when I was co-chair is a few years ago, right before COVID, right? The United States and underrepresented cultures are going through this change. We've had George Floyd, we had Atlanta, we had the Trump administration, and we had COVID, and we had all this stuff kind of happening at the same time. And quite honestly, we did not know that was going to be a need that our ERG needed to provide for our community. Coming right up to that point, leading up to it, we were a place for career development. We were a place for celebrations. We're really big in bringing people together for parties to eat and to celebrate Chinese New Year or Tet. And I kind of always had the feeling, I'm like, we needed to be more. We need to be ready for it. We just didn't know when it was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, a few years ago, it all happened at the same time. And to give you a specific example of kind of how that culminated, it really, our retail organization turns out really needed that place to come together and to talk and to really have a place to suss out what was happening to them. As you can imagine, we're a really big corporation. We're a really big tech company, but we also have this arm of people in our retailer organization that is, right there, public facing. So we're hearing a lot of stories about what they were going through COVID, trying to figure out what it's meaning to go to work, what it meant to go into a store and do this during COVID, what it meant to deal with people as Asians were being attacked, trying to figure out how all this worked and providing a space and being ready to have these types of discussions and having the leadership and the trust and ability for us to provide these places for people to have those conversations was just a really inspiring and wonderful thing for our employees to have from the company and from our leadership to help them through those times. And so, again, just being ready and possibly not knowing what you need to provide and having the infrastructure and the support to do that was just very fulfilling. And I'm very proud to be a part of that.
Thanks, Mike. And Belinda, I know that TikTok is new in the ERG space. You can talk about this aspirationally if you want, but what do you think are the opportunities to serve the ANHPI community through ERGs?
Absolutely. As you know, TikTok is a young company and a young organization. We started launching our ERGs in 2021, and we have 5 of them. And I would say for us, relative to the ERGs, what it has been is education, education, education. They have educated the organization about the API lived experience. They were the first to let us know, similar to what my colleagues had mentioned, about what was going on with the API community around Stop Asian Hate. And they held us accountable. That was the thing that was so important, holding us accountable as an organization to not just sit by and do nothing while this was going on. So we leveraged, of course, the TikTok platform to amplify voices. We gave philanthropically. And they stayed with us to ensure that the organization was doing the right thing. Other things that our ERG has done is they have helped with mentorship with our intern program to ensure that the next generation of future employees, that they would have a place to land when they did come to TikTok from a full-time perspective. They have also ensured that the API community is celebrated 365, not just during API Heritage Month. They launched a speaker series in January to really break that mold of just celebrating during API Heritage Month. And they had programmatic elements over a whole week-long span called Arise of the Tiger. The name of the employee resource group is Arise, where they had speakers come in, they had creators come in to talk about the API community, to talk about wellness, to talk about professional development. So they are very, very active when it comes to building the competencies of the organization around the API community and ensuring that we are avoiding any cultural blind spots that may happen because we are totally informed. So definitely learning, definitely growing, definitely ensuring that philanthropically, that we are supporting those communities and that we are providing learning experiences to our leaders overall, while at the same time helping the next group of leaders coming into the organization from a mentorship perspective.
I have to say, I'm incredibly inspired by these stories. And I thank the panelists for showing us the way when it comes to ERGs. I mean, think about it. We know from research, we know from our own experience that when we feel connected to each other, when we feel a sense of belonging, we're going to perform better. We're going to be more loyal to our company. We're going to want to do the best job we can. And if you have these ERGs, that is foundational for you to be ready, Mike, as you were mentioning, for whatever may come down the road, good or bad. My final area of inquiry is, I think we can all agree that we are forever changed by COVID. And there's a lot of return to work activity that is now happening among many different companies and organizations. People may be physically coming back to offices. Some people may be doing hybrid. Some people may be virtual or continue virtual. So talk a little bit about how ERGs can be leveraged in this new working environment that we're faced with. And if you don't exactly know, because I don't think any of us have the answers yet, I'd love to hear what your perspective is on how you'd like to see ERGs leveraged, because this is all new, I think, for all of us. So I'm just going to start pointing to people, and I'm going to point to Vanessa.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. That's $1 million question, right? What are we going to do with this new hybrid work environment, if even? But what I would love to talk about actually is some of the pain points that I think the economy is facing and how ERGs can actually support that. I know that seems like a grand idea, but hear me out here. We're in the Great Awakening, which means more than ever, employees are quitting. Employees are either quitting their corporate jobs, they don't want to go to work anymore, or you have the other side of the population of employees needing to find jobs, and they want to find jobs where they're heard and they're celebrated, right? So when you think about ERGs, think of them as power levers, right? You can have a disengaged employee, a neutral employee, and an engaged employee. You want your employees to fall in the highly engaged section when you are running an organization and operating your business. When you think of all these amazing examples that Belinda gave and Mike and Alexandra gave, those employees, I guarantee you 90% of the time are probably highly engaged employees because they care about the company that they work for. So not only is this a way to combat that great resignation of, hey, if you work at our company, you get to talk about things that you would have never been able to work with in any other organization. And on the flip side, let's talk about recruitment, right? It's also a talent war, if you think about it, for people who are actively applying for jobs, right? Engineering, product, for some of the more popular departments. But we actually launched a program called DoorDash Connections, where every single employee within certain departments that are, close to an offer stage or talking to a hiring manager preliminary stage, we actually have a whole group of like hundreds of ERG leaders, and members who volunteer to be like, hey, I want to be on that cell call with them because I want them to actually know what is it actually like to work here, right? And that was a new program coming out of feedback from employees saying, hey, Vanessa, I love that you have this program, but before I got into this signing offer stage, I did not know what it was like to be an Indigenous employee or a Black employee, right? Or to be even more specific, a Black female employee or an Asian, parent. And by leveraging and connecting people who want to do the work and who want to engage with these new people who are applying for jobs, they're talking to each other. And we could have not have increased our acceptance rates without our ERG program. And I think the takeaway is also this: give people the opportunity if they're hungry for it, right? Our ERG leaders are hungry to influence. Why not give them that as a lever to both empower your products, your community, and your business? And I think for the first time ever in capitalism, there can be a net positive.
Thanks. Alex, talk to us about what Comcast is going to do to keep employees happy.
Absolutely. And I love what Vanessa just shared as well. This hybrid environment, I mean, you're absolutely right, Susan. This is here to stay. And I think we're all grappling with what the future would look like. I think the lucky thing here is that we have been dabbling in this world for several years now. So for us, obviously, virtual is here to stay, but also being authentic and making sure that we're catering to employee needs, whether that means in-person engagement, virtual engagement. So for us, we're actually looking to leverage technology in a way that makes that possible, right? So integrating and where I sit, I'm very fortunate and humbled to lead all of our employee engagement work, inclusive of volunteerism and all of our other portfolios. So leveraging that technology as kind of the core to enable hybrid experiences, hybrid events for our employees, and really creating that one-stop shop experience so the employees feel well included. I will say cross-collaboration is the other trend that we are seeing that breaks beyond hybrid, in-person, virtual, and really intersectionality. And I mentioned earlier, we stood up this wonderful governance structure and an Elevate Fund that actually empowers cross ERGs to better collaborate, to stand up events, speaker events, learning opportunities where they can cross-collaborate, learn about each other, and create those connections, whether that is in a hybrid experience or in person. And I think we'll continue to see that. So really creating those intersectionality opportunities that are flexible, right? That bring opportunity to employees in a way that we haven't seen before. So I think that is one of the pieces that we're seeing moving forward. I would also say the continued trend of listening, learning, and then taking action. So listening to our employees, having those conversations, in many ways raw and authentic conversations, and then taking that feedback and taking action collectively together. I see that as really the key to future engagement and employees as driving culture for us.
All right, Belinda, TikTok, what are you all going to do? We're all equalized here. We're all at the same place, whether we're new or old on ERG. So how are you thinking about ERG?
Definitely. Well, the interesting thing about TikTok and our employee resource groups is that they were all formed during the pandemic. So a number of them have never met. They've never engaged. So they are very interested, and we're interested as well in them getting outside and then being involved with philanthropic efforts to support the communities where we live, work, and play. They want to give back. They want to put a face to the wonderful entertainment platform that TikTok is, because the community, the world at large, knows TikTok as a great place to be inspired. But now it's time for us to really put the face behind all of the wonderful things that the TikTok app really represents. And that's our employees. Our employees are the one that are creating the wonderful things that we all take advantage of and that we all enjoy about the application. So they want to be involved with giving back. We want to leverage them for a lot of we already do, but in person, we want to be able to have our employee resource groups be involved with pipelining efforts, to be involved with recruitment, to go to conferences, for all of those things where they are interacting with our community overall. So that's something that they're eager to do. That's something that we want to be able to do and to provide to them as well. So very looking forward to that.
Terrific. And finally, Mike, what is Apple going to do great resignation, keeping people happy at home, et cetera, in this new world.
You're killing me, Susan. Thanks for relating me that there's a bunch of people getting ready to quit. It's really interesting, right? Return to work has been an issue for us, but the thing that we've kind of imparted on our community and to other communities inside Apple, it really is that, again, this is a point in time where it's up to us to figure it out. There's a cultural value that we have that now is the time to voice your opinion and be engaged. Our employees have a voice, and they have a connection through their executive sponsor. They have a seat at the table. ERGs are another place for employees to utilize for them to contribute to figuring out what that cultural value is. And right now, that cultural value is moving around. And so it's kind of an amazing time for our employees and our members to give their opinions and try to formulate what that looks like. One of the things that I believe, and I think that it's a part of Apple, is that culture is an organization's biggest asset. It's what can change the world. It enables us to build products and develop ideas that enable us to change people's lives. And kind of taking little pieces and culture and the amazing things that everyone brings to the table contributes to that. And not only in our products, but it's going to be in what work culture looks like as we move into the near future. So I can't emphasize enough how much ERGs contribute to building culture and to adding to the DNA of our products.
So in the remaining minutes that we have, I'm going to put a jump ball out there, but if you don't answer, I'm going to pick on people. So I just want to warn you. But I think the final area I'd love to hear you all talk about is this is maybe more like aspirational, is, we have a world now that is really hurting right outside our walls, even within our walls, our employees, and the humanity of our employees, I think we were able to kind of connect more with during our time away from the office. At least that's how I felt. But our communities are hurting. Talk a little bit about some ideas. And I know some of you have already said what you're doing in the community, but what would be the best thing you could use your ERGs for when we talk about sustainability, big S, right? The sustainable development goals, solving the world's biggest problems. Talk a little bit about ERGs and the great power that we have there with our employees to do great things, amazing things, transformational things in the world outside our walls. And again, I'll let anyone jump in. And if you don't jump in, I will pick you.
I love to jump in there if possible. I'd like to tie back to what Belinda said earlier, which is accountability. It's a hard pill to swallow. And I think the thing that we're talking about all this great work, but we're also all learning at the same time, right? And we think about DEI work, if you think about ERG work, 10, 20 years ago, it was all rooted in compliance. And now it's rooted in activism, right? So companies have to adjust to that. And I think the learning here is, in order to be better, it has to be a little painful, right? Think about working out in the gym, building a muscle, right? You're going to have to be really, really sore. And I think the way that the ERGs have done this is they've held companies accountable, where you actually can use that crisis as a dialogue for education, as a dialogue to build diversity, inclusion, literacy, right? To put everyone on a path of actually thinking about, what does diversity mean to you? This big buzzword right now, what does it actually mean to you for an organization? I'll give you an example. During the rise of Asian hate early on, it was paralyzing, right? Managers would reach out to HR teams saying, Vanessa, what do we do? What do we say? And there was no blueprint. And as a company, we decided to speak up on it and send an email out to all the directors, all the VPs, all the people managers, and said, hey, here are the 6 things you can do. And some of it is actually addressing the elephant in the room and pulling your employees and saying, hey, I acknowledge what's happening in the world right now. You don't have to respond right now, but here's how I can support you, right? Putting a pause to the business. Can we redistribute work labor to people who are more bearable to handle some of this work? And I think what we learned was, in times of crisis, it's very, very uncomfortable. But once the company as a whole goes through that exercise together, unfortunately, by the time the next incident happens, managers are super prepared. Leaders are super prepared, where they actually have reached out to me and said, Vanessa, I've actually canceled meetings for 3 days, right? And what I can do most in the workplace is do that. But my employees have come to me and said, wow, like I was never comfortable as a person in that community coming to my boss saying I don't want to work, but you've actually done that proactively. So I think that's like the 1% little way that ERGs can kind of disrupt the flow of the business and actually be a little bit more human and teach our leaders, our managers, so many people how to react to their employees. But it's still a learning journey. And I can't say that we've nailed it, to be honest. But that's just some of the things that I am proud of the 1% better things that we're doing.
Thank you. Disruption. Love it. Who wants to go next or be called on? Alex.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, our ERGs are on the front lines of any social or local issue that might be happening, any concern. So they are plugged in. So for us, it's really about listening, having that conversation, having that authentic conversation, and then challenging the status quo. And it's a little bit of what Belinda shared earlier as well, holding us collectively accountable because we are all one, right? All trying to lead in the same direction here. And for us, we stood up a governance structure where we've employed some of the most senior business leaders within the company as national champions within each of our ERGs. So there's that collective partnership where the business is listening. Business leaders are listening to our ERG concerns, feedback, recommendations, and then making that decision together, right? Collaborating and making a decision together that works for the good of the community, the good of our employee sentiment, and the good of the business. And it's really that trifecta conversation and making sure that it's authentic to us as a brand, us as a community. So for us, it's really about that conversation, listening, receiving that feedback, and then doing something about it, taking action.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike.
Yeah, I could follow up from Alexandra. She said something really great, and that's listening to your employees. And I think one of the last thing I kind of wanted to impart on people is that as leaders, we might not know what the next best thing is, but to challenge our employees, not only ICs, but challenge managers, challenge executives to think about what's the next thing, to really think about what's the next thing that ERGs can help come up with, what are ideas that they can bring to business, and kind of use them almost as a business unit. It's not only this place where people get together and celebrate or get together to resolve issues in their community, but it's a great resource to go to figure out how to inject those ideas into the business. And I can't really emphasize enough on how many great ideas and great initiatives and just crazy whiteboard stuff that people come up with, propose to leadership, and it becomes, something great. So I just wanted to applaud everybody for the great ideas I'm hearing here, because I'm going to take a lot of them to my ERG and try to implement them there as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Belinda, bring us home on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Vanessa said something that really resonated with me, and it was something that our ERGs really made sure, our API ERG really made sure broke through. And that was, don't put us in the box. Don't stereotype us. We're going to give you the real. We have challenges just like every other community. Treat us as individuals and know that we are definitely here with you as an organization, but you have to understand that we're real people. And that has really shown through in terms of amplifying their voices, breaking all the myths in terms of perception that anyone in the company may have had about the community. And I think that has really just broadened their exposure and allowed the organization to leverage the insights that they have provided to be better, to bring to our diversity task force, which is a platform that we have really formed to be that bridge between our employee base as well as our entertainment platform, TikTok. So I think the realism that our employees in our API Arise ERG has brought to us has really been an awakening for the organization relative to the API community overall. So I think bringing us to real has really helped us in that way.
Well, I don't know. I know that the audience is feeling the way I do right now, which is like, there's just like just a million light bulbs going off right now. And I'm incredibly inspired by what I heard. If you do not have an ERG, run, do not walk to the drawing board and begin to plan to create one. You have just heard why ERGs are not just great diversity, equity, and inclusion tools, but they are good for business. They make companies great. And I know that every time that I am on Comcast internet service, using my Apple products to order something on DoorDash and to make a video badly on TikTok, I'm going to be remembering that these are companies that are not just leading tech, but they're leading in what they're doing for people and for communities. So I want to thank each and every one of you for a stellar amount of information and learning that I had. And I want to thank APAICS for convening us together and wish you all very well in your ERG journeys. Thank you.